Be me, Mr. Henderson, retired architect. 72 years young, some might say, but my mind is sharp as a tack, and my hands still possess the precision honed over 5 decades of drafting and design. My home, a meticulously maintained craftsman nestled in a quiet, upscale HOA community, is my sanctuary. Every blade of grass in my garden is intentionally placed, every bush trimmed to perfection. I live by the rules not out of fear, but because I believe in order, in shared responsibility, in the sanctity of one's own space and the respect of another's. My evenings are spent on my porch, enjoying the quiet hum of twilight, a good book in hand, a glass of iced tea beside me. My peace is my treasure, hard-earned and fiercely protected. Be not me, Chadwick Chad Barrington III, 30-something. New money, new to the neighborhood, and new to the concept of boundaries. He bought the house directly adjacent to mine, a sprawling, modern monstrosity that had stood empty for a year. From the moment the moving vans pulled up, a palpable shift occurred in our once serene cul-de-sac. Chad drove a gleaming red sports car, wore bespoke suits even to retrieve his mail, and carried an air of self-importance that grated like fingernails on a chalkboard. He saw our meticulously crafted community, not as a shared haven, but as a blank canvas for his unfettered ego. His first week, he installed floodlights that cast a garish glow over half the neighborhood. His second week, the construction began. The escalation. The first sign of true trouble came with the gazebo. One morning, a crew arrived, not a word to the HOA or any neighbors. Within days, a sprawling, ostentatious structure of dark wood and frosted glass began to take shape in Chad's backyard. It wasn't the gazebo itself that was the problem, it was its placement. It encroached significantly onto the common green space that bordered both our properties, a shared manicured lawn meant for quiet enjoyment. Our HOA bylaws were crystal clear on setback requirements, especially for structures impacting common areas. This gazebo was at least 5 feet over the line. I walked over, bylaws in hand, and politely pointed out the infringement to Chad, who was supervising the crew in a silk robe and sunglasses. "Good morning, Mr. Barrington," I began, my voice even. "I believe there might be a slight misunderstanding regarding the placement of your new gazebo. Section 4.7 of our community's architectural guidelines clearly states a 10-foot setback from all common property lines. Your structure, as it stands, appears to be well within that exclusion zone." Chad barely glanced at me, taking a sip from a tall, iced drink. "Henderson, is it? Look, old man, everything's squared away. Permits are approved, HOA gave the green light. Just enjoying my property. Mind your own business." He waved a dismissive hand, turning back to his crew. I tried again. "With all due respect, I haven't seen any notification from the HOA regarding a variance for such a large structure in that specific location. Common areas are a shared resource, and any encroachment affects all of us." He finally turned, a smirk playing on his lips. "What, you think I just started building without clearing it? I'm Chad Barrington, not some Yahoo. I've already handled it. A little expedited processing fee went a long way. The HOA board knows what's up. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it." He winked. The board indeed issued a retroactive approval a week later, citing minor adjustments to the community landscape plan. It stung. It showed me Chad wasn't just arrogant, he was connected, or at least he bought his connections. My peace was already starting to fray. The loud, late-night parties began a month later. Every Friday and Saturday, sometimes Tuesdays, thumping bass vibrated through my walls until the early hours. I'd spent decades cultivating a quiet, tranquil home environment. My prize-winning hybrid tea roses in the garden required morning light, and I required morning rest. I filed official noise complaints with the HOA. I called the non-emergency police line twice. Nothing changed. Chad simply laughed it off. "Lighten up, Henderson," he shouted over a blaring pop anthem one evening, spotting me on my porch. "It's called living a little. This isn't a retirement home." The HOA Social Committee, actually decided to extend quiet hours on weekends. We're modernizing this place. He was, of course, the self-appointed chairman of said social committee, a title he used to push his own agenda under the guise of community enrichment. My complaints were always met with vague assurances and then swiftly buried. The frustration grew, a slow, hot burn in my chest. Then came the retaining wall. Chad decided his massive, already oversized pool needed a new, more architecturally significant retaining wall. His property sloped slightly towards mine, and his original, perfectly adequate wall was well within his boundaries. This new wall, however, began to creep. Day by day, as the stone masons laid block after block, I watched in growing horror as the new foundation edged past his original property line, inching deeper into my backyard. It was subtle at first, just a few inches, then a foot, then almost 3. Not only was it destroying the edge of my manicured lawn, but it was dangerously close to the roots of my beloved ancient oak tree, a protected species in our city and a centennial landmark of my property. I had planted that tree as a sapling. Its canopy provided shade, its roots stabilized the soil, and its presence was a constant, comforting reminder of nature's enduring strength. It was sacred. I confronted him, pointing to the obvious encroachment. "Mr. Barrington, this wall is on my property. It's encroaching almost 3 feet into my land, and it's severely threatening the root system of my oak tree." He strolled over, wiping his hands on a pristine white towel. "Relax, Henderson, it's just minor landscaping. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. My landscaper said this was the best way to stabilize the slope. And honestly, that old tree of yours, it's an eyesore. Drops leaves everywhere. I'm doing you a favor by reinforcing the soil around it, keeping it from falling on my new wall." He had the gall to grin, the breaking point. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply went inside and retrieved the official survey plat for my property, dated and stamped by the county recorder's office. I returned, laying it flat on a small outdoor table. My finger traced the bright red line that denoted my property boundary. "This," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "is my land. This wall, as you can see, is well over that line." Chad peered at the document, scoffing. "That old thing, probably out of date. Look, I've got my own surveys, and I've got the HOA's blessing. They greenlit my plans for the entire backyard renovation." He pulled out a flimsy, digitally signed document, purportedly from the HOA Architectural Review Committee. It listed vague slope stabilization and aesthetic improvements. It looked official enough to a casual observer, but to my architect's eye, it lacked specific measurements or detailed drawings, a red flag. "This document," I stated, holding it up, "does not specify a boundary infringement, nor does it grant permission to damage a protected oak tree, which, by the way, carries significant fines from the city's environmental department." Chad's eyes narrowed. "You know what, Henderson? You're getting really tiresome. I'm trying to make this neighborhood look better, bring some class, and you're complaining about a few feet of dirt and a ratty old tree. I'm telling you, back off. If you continue to harass me, I'll have my lawyer send you a cease and desist. And I'll use my influence on the HOA board to fine you for obstructing community beautification efforts. You don't want to go up against me, old man." The very next day, a formal letter arrived from the HOA. It was signed by Chadwick Barrington III in his capacity as Chairman, Social and Beautification Committee. The letter demanded that I immediately prune overhanging branches from my oak tree that were interfering with and threatening Mr. Barrington's new retaining wall. It threatened a daily fine of $50 if I failed to comply within 7 days. The irony was suffocating. The branches in question were clearly on my side of the true property line and had been for decades, posing no threat to his previous lawful wall. This wasn't just an infringement. It was an act of aggression, a blatant attempt to intimidate me into abandoning my property rights and sacrificing my treasured tree. My peace was shattered. The master plan. I stopped reacting. The anger, the frustration, the sense of violation, I bottled it. I had spent a lifetime designing, planning, executing complex projects. This was no different. Chad had made a fundamental mistake. He had mistaken my quiet demeanor for weakness, my patience for passivity. He had drawn a line in the sand, but he had drawn it on my property. This wasn't just about a few feet of land anymore. It was about principle, about the systematic abuse of power, about respect. Chad had not just crossed a line, he had declared war on my sanctuary. And I, Mr. Henderson, was about to teach him a very expensive lesson in civility and property law. My first step was to descend into my meticulously organized home office. I pulled out my binders of HOA bylaws, property deeds, and community architectural guidelines. I spent days poring over every clause, every amendment, every obscure footnote. My architect's mind, trained to spot discrepancies and inconsistencies, quickly found several. Chad's original gazebo permit, the one he claimed was approved. It was for a smaller footprint, located further back from the common area. The expedited processing fee, likely pushed through a change order that was never formally reviewed or voted upon by the full HOA board, only signed off by a single, compromised individual. This was a violation of procedure. The retaining wall, it required city building permits, not just HOA approval, especially given its size and impact on a slope. I checked the city's permit database. No record of a permit issued to Chadwick Barrington III for any retaining wall. A quick call to the city's Department of Environmental Protection confirmed that my oak tree was indeed a protected species, and any damage to its root system without specific arboricultural and city approval would result in substantial fines and mandated remediation. My deepest dive involved the HOA's internal structure. Chad's Social and Beautification Committee had no authority whatsoever to approve structural changes, issue variances, or supersede the comprehensive architectural guidelines. His committee was for organizing potlucks and holiday decorations. He was acting ultra vires, far beyond his delegated powers. A closer look at the HOA's publicly available financial statements, coupled with a bit of public record searching, revealed something interesting. Several large consultant fees paid out to a company named Barrington Landscaping Solutions, a company incorporated 3 months prior, with Chad's cousin listed as the sole proprietor. The dates of these payments mysteriously coincided with his expedited approvals. Evidence gathering became my new full-time project. I hired a different surveyor, one renowned for his meticulousness and impartiality, to conduct a new, independent survey of both our properties, specifically focusing on the retaining wall and the common area encroachment. The results, as expected, confirmed my initial assessment: blatant trespass. I installed small, discrete security cameras, well within my property boundaries, but positioned to capture clear, time-stamped footage of the construction, the ongoing noise violations, and crucially, any interaction between Chad and his contractors regarding the encroaching wall. I took hundreds of high-resolution photographs, documenting every angle, every inch of infringement, every damaged root of my oak. I contacted a property lawyer, an old college friend who specialized in HOA disputes. His initial reaction was incredulity, then a grim determination. "Henderson," he said, "this isn't just a dispute. This is fraud, misrepresentation, and potential environmental damage. You've got a gold mine here." Together, we built an airtight case. We identified every loophole Chad had exploited, every rule he had broken, every document he had likely forged or manipulated. The goal was no longer just the removal of the wall. It was massive fines, the invalidation of all his illegal structures, his permanent removal from any HOA position, and potentially a criminal investigation into the financial irregularities and forgery. My revenge would be methodical, devastating, and entirely within the letter of the law. The execution and climax. The annual HOA general meeting was held on a Tuesday evening in the community clubhouse. Chad was there, of course, presiding over the initial formalities as chairman of the Social and Beautification Committee. He sat at the head table, resplendent in a designer suit, a self-satisfied smirk plastered on his face. The agenda was standard: treasurer's report, old business, new business. I sat in the back row, a nondescript attendee, my briefcase resting on my lap. Inside was the culmination of months of patient, meticulous work, my dossier. After what felt like an eternity of mundane reports, Chad announced, "All right, folks, any new business to discuss before we move to adjourning?" He scanned the room, clearly expecting no one. I raised my hand slowly, deliberately. Chad sighed, clearly annoyed. "Yes, Mr. Henderson, I trust this isn't about your oak tree again. We've already handled that." My voice was calm, clear, and carried across the quiet room. "Actually, Mr. Chairman, it is very much about the oak tree, and the retaining wall, and the gazebo, and more broadly, a systemic issue of property line disputes and alleged HOA malfeasance." A ripple went through the room. Chad's smirk faltered. "This is highly inappropriate, Mr. Henderson. We are not here to air personal grievances. You're making baseless accusations." "Baseless," I replied, rising and walking towards the front. "I assure you, nothing I'm about to say is baseless. I've compiled a full dossier, meticulously documented, covering every relevant detail." I placed my thick binder on the table in front of him with a soft thud, starting with the original gazebo permit, which was for a significantly smaller structure and a different location, followed by the retaining wall, which clearly encroaches 3 feet onto my property, violating both city building codes and HOA bylaws, not to mention the direct and ongoing damage to a protected oak tree. Chad attempted to interrupt, his voice rising. "This is ridiculous. I have all the proper approvals. This is a vendetta, a personal attack." "Indeed," I said, opening my binder to the relevant sections. "Let's examine those approvals, shall we? Here, for instance, is the original permit for your gazebo issued on April 12th. Note the specified dimensions and placement. And here," I flipped a page, "is the actual gazebo you constructed, far exceeding those specifications. You then obtained a retroactive approval via the Social and Beautification Committee. Funny, because as per Article V, Section 2.3 of our bylaws, your committee holds no authority to approve structural alterations or grant variances." I laid out side-by-side comparisons of the original permit drawings and photographs of his oversized gazebo. Then I moved to the wall. "And here, Mr. Barrington, are 2 independent surveys, both confirming the egregious encroachment of your retaining wall onto my property. Furthermore, here is an arborist's report detailing the severe root damage sustained by my protected oak tree, directly attributable to your construction. The city's Department of Environmental Protection has received a copy of this, by the way, and has expressed considerable interest." The board members shifted uncomfortably. A few whispered. Chad was beginning to sweat. "You're fabricating all of this," he blustered, pushing the binder away. "You're just an angry old man who hates progress." "Fabrication is a serious charge," I said, my eyes locking onto his. "Perhaps we should discuss actual fabrication, such as these HOA financial records." I presented printouts, showing several large consultant fees paid to Barrington Landscaping Solutions, a company conveniently owned by your cousin, for services rendered to expedite these very approvals. Approvals, I might add, which appear to have been signed off by you, Mr. Barrington, without a proper board vote or even a review by the actual architectural committee. Silence descended upon the room, thick and heavy. The color had drained from Chad's face. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. I leaned forward slightly, my voice dropping to a low, chilling tone. "And just to ensure we're all operating on the same level of transparency, I've taken the liberty of forwarding copies of this entire dossier, including the surveys, the arborist's report, the photographic evidence, the video footage of construction and the financial irregularities, to the city's Department of Environmental Protection, the county's Building and Permits Division, and of course, the district attorney's office. I believe they might have a slightly different opinion on what constitutes baseless accusations or personal grievances. They're particularly interested in potential fraud and environmental violations. I believe you have a meeting scheduled with them, Mr. Barrington, bright and early tomorrow morning. Chad's mouth opened, then snapped shut. His arrogance had shattered. He was utterly, completely lost. The fallout, the aftermath was swift and brutal. Within 24 hours, the city issued multiple immediate stop work orders on Chad's property. Accompanying them were preliminary citations for illegal construction, environmental damage to a protected tree, and failure to secure proper permits. The fines alone were substantial, accumulating daily. The HOA board, now fully aware of their own complicity and facing imminent legal action and potential public scandal, went into damage control. In an emergency session, they immediately voted to strip Chad of his Social and Beautification Committee chairmanship and initiated formal proceedings to have all his unapproved structures, the oversized gazebo and the encroaching retaining wall, declared nuisances and ordered to be removed at his sole expense. The HOA treasurer, who had apparently signed off on some of the consultant fees without question, tendered her resignation by the end of the week, citing personal reasons. My lawyer friend, now fully engaged, filed a civil suit against Chad for trespass, property damage, and emotional distress. Faced with overwhelming evidence, a looming criminal investigation, and the sheer financial burden of defending himself against multiple entities, Chad folded. He was forced to demolish his new retaining wall, restore my property to its original state, including a full remediation of the oak tree's root system, and pay substantial damages to me. The oversized gazebo was ordered to be reduced to its permitted dimensions or removed entirely. The community, once swayed by Chad's bravado, turned on him with a fury, realizing they had been duped and that their property values were now at risk due to his flagrant disregard for rules. Thread bumps. Update 1 2 weeks later, the quiet has returned to the cul-de-sac. Chad's backyard looks like a war zone. Crews are out there not building but tearing down. The massive, garish gazebo is half dismantled, a sad skeletal ruin. The retaining wall is gone, replaced by careful earthworks and new topsoil laid down on my side, supervised by my arborist. My roses are blooming again, unaffected by the ordeal, vibrant and defiant. Neighbors greet me with a nod and a quiet smile, a silent acknowledgement of a battle won. The HOA is conducting a full, independent audit, and I hear whispers of more resignations to come. Update 2, 1 month later, Chad has listed his house for sale. The for sale sign looks rather pathetic next to the half-demolished gazebo. The HOA has officially levied a record fine against him for numerous violations, far beyond what they initially threatened me with. The original, compromised HOA board members are now facing censure and possible recall petitions from the community. My oak tree, ancient and wise, is thriving, its leaves rustling in the breeze, seemingly offering a quiet chuckle at the foolishness of men. A small victory but deeply satisfying. Update 3 months later, Chad Barrington III is gone. The red sports car is gone. The house sold, I hear, at a significant loss, especially with all the remediation costs and fines he had to cover. New neighbors moved in last week, a lovely young couple with 2 small children. They knocked on my door yesterday, a plate of fresh cookies in hand, and politely asked about the property lines. I welcomed them with a warm smile, produced a copy of my meticulously filed, updated survey, and spent a pleasant hour explaining the nuances of our HOA bylaws. Peace has truly returned to my sanctuary. Sometimes you just have to remind people what boundaries truly mean.